At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Larry, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dr. Doug.
Hey, I'm excited to have you on the show. Interesting topic that we're going to talk about today. And I'd love for you to kind of share with the audience who you are, what your background is, and how did you end up, and what was your journey to bring you to this point in your life and doing what you're doing?
So I had no idea that my life was in the advertising world. That's where I spent my career. And in the advertising world, you have to communicate by shorter words and simpler words, because that's what it takes to survive in advertising. If you don't have shorter, simpler words, nobody's going to listen to you. And so that's where I was actually started my life in the advertising business. But through the 90s, and actually, if I go back to the 1970s, I married a woman who was the toughest, roughest woman in the world in my life. And she became my wife, and that's Marcia. And Marcia made my life very, very hard. And the reason it was so hard is because that marriage was a woman who was raised in a home of strong people. The mother and father were very strong. And when they wanted to make their point, they got angry. And so that's what she learned. She learned anger. In the meantime, I have parents who were very quiet and subdued and didn't share their feelings. They didn't do anything mean to each other. They were very nice people. But privately, they were not happy. And because they were not happy, one was an alcoholic and one was a gambler. So that's my parents were shutdown experts. They shut down. That's what they did. So when the woman who was angry marries the man who shuts down, what happens? Well, she gets angry and he shuts down just so predictably. But that was at the very beginning, and I didn't see any of that, didn't know any of it, didn't have any idea. So I spent 40 years with her. And so for the first 27 years, that was the hardest time of my life, because so just to give you some historical perspective, when they impeached Nixon, that's the year we married. Okay. When they elected the second Bush, that's when I ended my 27 years of hell. And the reason I ended my hell is because I didn't divorce her. What I did is I finally realized I could love myself. And when I could love myself, I changed all kinds of things. So the reason she was so angry is because I was so angry. The reason she was so reactionary to me is I was reactionary to myself. And so all the stuff that I learned through pain. And that 40 years, the first 27 years, was the most dramatic of that pain. And so that was really, people will say, well, are you a psychologist? I said, no, I had Marcia. I was raised by a Marcia. And so
let me interrupt you for a minute, because you brought something and I don't want to forget talking about it real quick. So after 27 years, you said you started to learn to love yourself. What gave you that awareness? What came up, or what happened that you ultimately said to yourself, oh my goodness, this has a lot to do with me, not her?
Yes. Well, that didn't come easy at all. And if you could picture the portrait is a mad, angry woman storming around and attacking me in every way she could. And what I was doing was reacting to that and shutting down. And in the shutdown, I was learning something. And so I used to take out yellow pads of paper and I would write furiously for pages and pages and pages of what am I learning? What am I discovering? And because I was trying to become a learner. Because if I didn't become a learner, I would become just a person who collapsed into some kind of depression. So I couldn't have that. So I had to spend all my energy learning from what she was providing. She was providing pain. And a pain provider is a very good thing in life. When you have a pain provider, whether it be a professor, whether it be an Army drill sergeant, whether it be a bad boss, no matter what it is, it's going to teach you something. And that's where you're going to learn to be really who you really are. And so that's really what happened to me. I had to learn who I really was. And so in the 27 years, that started in the 70s, and I went through that whole 27 years, getting closer and closer and closer to discovering who I really was. And so when we look at me as I use a scale called the Chaos to Purpose scale. And so I was raised right in the middle of that scale in the twilight zone. The middle of the scale is the place where they don't really raise you. You raise yourself. And the reason you have to raise yourself is because they're not teaching you. They're not guiding you. They're not giving you principles. They're not saying anything to you, really. So what my mother and father were doing is they were trying to live their own lives. And because they were trying to live their own lives, they weren't raising us because that wasn't their passion. Their passion was with their own self-pursuits. Right. So that was my discovery process. And so as I started to learn that more and more, I had to decide, like, what do I know about myself? What do I like about myself? And this is not like that simple. It's like, what do I like about myself? You don't ask yourself that question when you're going through pain. But I like to say it's a very convoluted, distorted learning process. And you can't duplicate it. You can't duplicate that learning process because it's in pain. You are in pain every day, every month, every week, every year. You're always in pain under some kind of new event that's always causing you trouble. So I really couldn't do anything but stick to it and keep on learning. The other reason I kept sticking to it and not leaving, quitting, divorcing, is because I was programmed to stay married and miserable. And that's how my parents were. That's what her parents were. They were married and miserable. And by staying married and miserable, you have to not quit. And so that kept us together. And that allowed the learning to continue. So the big sticking point for me was saying, I either have to go ahead in learning or I have to go backwards and collapse. Ahead in learning or backwards and collapse. I couldn't decide, and so I had to, some pressure event had to do it. And so when I finally had that pressure event, that became my snap line. I really decided that I'm going to be a learner. I'm going to use all this trouble to learning. And so that's what the 27 years, like somewhere in the early part of it, I had to make the decision that I was going to stay and learn. And so that meant a lot of writing, a lot of journaling, a lot of discovery. And my little format was my yellow legal pads where I had them all stacked up with all kinds of ideas and tools and discoveries and all those things. But why did I learn it all that way? I learned it because I was in pain. And so I always like to say when people are in pain, when they're in, like the most common one is really tough marriages. But what people want to do is they want to leave bad marriages. And so in my discovery process of working with marriage all these 15 years, I realized these patterns that people have. They have a chaos childhood, and so like what will happen is they'll high side of the scale. They're raised on the high side of the scale. They marry a person raised on the low side of the scale. And the reason that's so important is because the scale represents values. So values of commitment, loyalty, honesty, joy, communication, comfort, likability, all those are values that you're given in a 10 side of the scale, at the high side. What you learn in the low side is dysfunction, debate, arguing, fighting, criticism, blame, defensiveness, confrontation. You learn all those things in the lower side of the scale. And that's what it is. It's a value system, a value of the high side, a value of the lower side. And so that's actually what I discovered slowly going through this is I really was raised in the middle of the scale, what I called the twilight zone, because they didn't really raise me. I had to figure everything out myself. That's why when I got married, I had no idea what was happening. Like, I don't even know why I married or how it happened. It just was just a strange thing it didn't even have anything to do with falling in love. It had to do more with interest. I was interested in her, right? It was not like I fell in love with her. I didn't really have that. So I didn't love myself. So it made sense that I would get married to a person who couldn't love me. That would make sense, right? So now that I'm living that way, I had to finally decide through a lot of trouble that I had to be a learner. And becoming a learner is a decision anybody can make, but they can't make it unless they have a pain source.
So
Without that pain source, they can't.
what happened after 27 years? And you talked about 40 years now. So what happened after 27, and how did you ultimately start to develop a different relationship with your wife?
So think about this. I'm learning from her because she's providing pain. She's not providing teaching or instruction.
Right.
She's providing pain. What I'm providing is discovery, and I'm discovering things about myself and about her and about childhood and all the stuff that's being taught in psychology and all that information is out there. You just have to go find the pieces and assemble them. So I was motivated to do that. And that's why I talk so much about chaos kids, because what chaos kids are people who are raised at the bottom of the scale, and then they get married as adults and they expect they're going to have a marriage. Well, a chaos kid can't even stay married longer than 27 years. And the ones that go beyond 27 years are held by some other kind of glue that keeps them together that they don't even understand. So I realized that chaos kids are really the reason why marriages collapse. So I've spent time with people both raised at the top of the scale, and I've seen their dynamics, and their dynamics are they have goodwill, they have kindness, they have a sense of humor, they have likableness, they have forgiveness. That's the stuff that two people at the top of the scale are like. That's what they're like. That's why they can go to a marriage seminar, learn whatever's being delivered, and suddenly get better. And like you think, wow, look at that marriage seminar, that really turned them around. Well, the reason it turned them around is because they were both purpose kids. So I actually spent some time in a seminar with a guy who was teaching these kinds of ideas. And so when he would find people who really were in trouble, right, really a lot of trouble, I'd meet with them at the back of the room. And when I meet with them at the back of the room, you know what I found every time? One or both of them were chaos kids. One or both of them were at the bottom of that scale, that really troubling value system. And so every time I found that, and the guy on stage would say, hey, if you really are having some real serious trouble, go see Larry at the back of the room, right? So now remember, this group, I'm at a seminar like about 70, 80 people, and the people who came to the back of the room were really hurting. Why were they hurting? Because they had chaos in their childhoods. And that means the chaos is in that big vat below the conscious mind, right? That big vat holds all the instructions from the 55,000 hours of our waking days. For 10 years, we spend that kind of time with our parents. And those parents they call them programmers. But what they are is they're people who give instruction. And they give instruction because of what they don't do. They give instruction because of what they do. They give instruction by how they hurt. They give instruction by how they support. So all the things they give out are some kind of instruction in that big vat below the conscious mind. And so what goes into that vat is actually what runs your life. That's the reason psychologists say most of your life is actually run by the subconscious mind. I've never met anybody who really understands that and really can explain it, right? But the idea is there's this big vat in the bottom, and that big vat holds the 55,000 hours of messages. And that's really what it is. It's messages, because they're live, they're living messages, and they're active, and they're always ready to be shot up to the conscious mind and take you over. And because that's always waiting for you at any time, your subconscious actually runs your life. And most of us who live in the world of society and pop culture, we don't want to know that. We don't want to know the subconscious, because the subconscious is a weird, weird place. We don't want to think about it. What we want to think about is that little jar at the top, that conscious mind.
Okay, so 27 years. I'm going back to my original question. 27 years. What did you start doing, not for yourself, but how did you start communicating with your wife? What was the element that brought about the communication, I guess, to where you were able to start to change that relationship with your wife?
Okay, so with being two opposite systems, right, the fighting and the shutting down, what ended that is really your question. How did you stop living as a shutting down person with a fighting person? And it had to do with me and my own energy. And so my own energy was fear. That was actually governing me. And I couldn't see it was fear. And I didn't want to admit it was fear, but it was there. And so as I was living in fear, so long, and she kept pummeling it and right, stirring the fear, actually increasing it. I had to decide, what am I afraid of? And that was a very hard question to answer. What am I afraid of? What is my fear made of? And so as I started to dig deeper and deeper into that, I started to, and this is, we're talking years, by the way. This is not a weeks, it's years of slowly realizing that I was afraid of a lot of things, not just of her, but I was afraid of what I might think, about what I might do, about what I might destroy, right? So all of this is starting to me, causing me to realize that my fear is made with me. It's not made of anybody I marry. It's made of me. And so I bought into the fear idea. And the reason I bought the fear idea is it made me come up with an analogy. The analogy is called the cruise ship. And so what the cruise ship says is you're a cruise ship in the analogy, and you have a rat on your ship. And then you marry somebody and they have a cruise ship and they have a rat on their ship. Now the ships don't know they have rats, right? But the rats have radios and they're sending a message back and forth called against energy. And it's so severe the ships are separating and they don't know why. So your ship, the person who's aware, goes to the seminar and finds out they might have a rat. So they find out they have a rat and they get it off the ship finally. Now we have two ships, but this time we only have one rat. Now that one rat is still mad as ever, but it can't do anything because there's no second rat to push back. Because that's really what created the tension in me. I had this rat that was creating this big problem with her rat, and our ships were separating. Our ships were separating, and that's really what made me discover, oh, I can get this rat off the ship. I can do something about my own rat and get it off the ship. And that's going to allow me to start to feel less fear. And that turned out to be what started to change me, because now I didn't have to shut down so much. Now I could ask questions. Now I could talk. Now I can speak calmly, and maybe I can calm down. And so as I started to lose my fear, everything started to change, including the way she treated me. She treated me a whole lot better because my fear was gone. And that didn't have to do with her. It had to do with me.
Right.
And so once you have this, once you've isolated that, the problem's not out there. It's not out there in the world and all the characters that are out there. The problem is always in yourself. It's never out there. And once you realize it's never out there, now you got to look inside and find your answer. And your answer is you probably have a rat on your ship. And the rat on your ship is the pain of your childhood. And if you got a lot of pain in your childhood, you've got a bigger rat.
Wow. Okay. So, you talk about the chaos kid phenomenon, and chaos includes, I would assume, a lot of things, whether you have angry parents or parents that are really not really parenting, as you say, yes, or maybe one is and one isn't. Obviously, there's a number of people that go through both emotional, physical abuse, that type of thing. Right. All of those things are there. And, for you, it took you 27 years, but also a very inquisitive mind to be able to start, doing what you were doing, going to workshops, going to seminars, journaling, doing all of those type of things. So how do people that are in a relationship that is just not working for them, how does one of them actually, what are some of the key elements of their personality? What do they need to be able to do if they say, you know what, I want this to work, I want to stay married? What do they do?
So if we simplify this a lot in the podcast, you have to, because you don't want to get into the weeds with ideas. But if we simplify it, I start to tell you that what changed the whole marriage. I realized that I was living in fear. Uh-huh. And that took a long time, because somebody didn't mentor me into, did you realize you're in fear? No, it wasn't like that. I had to slowly discover it. But when you're thinking about the two worlds we could live in, we live in the world of fear or we live in the world of love. And so when we wanted to, like, fear and love, that's really kind of out there and weird, and I don't even know how to apply it. But let's think about it differently. If we think about fear and say fear is made of 1,000 words in the English language that are negative. And 1,000 words, that's a lot of words, right? And those are words like anxiety and doubt and frustration and hate and just all the words, 1,000 of them, okay? That's the world of fear, that 1,000 words, because it's not just the word, it's the energy of the word. So we have 1,000 words, we got 1,000 energies, and now we got a lot of negativity there, right? So now we go to the world of love. What's that? That's 1,000 words in the English language that we love. Kindness, forgiveness, thankfulness, beauty, joy, right? 1,000 words, right? When you think about 1,000 words, now you start realizing, oh, that's the world of love, but I can't comprehend 1,000 words. So what I teach is an assignment that I give people. And I said, what you do is go on the internet and enter the words, negative words. And when you enter the negative words, the internet will give you back lists and lists of words. And so what your job is to do is to go through those words and find 25. That's it, 25 words. And so when you have the 25 words, you now have fear for you, because the 25 words are words you relate to, words you understand, words that mean something to you. And now you've got a personalized list of fear. And so now when you have it, kind of relate to it because it's your words, right? And that's the fear assignment. The love assignment is to find 25 words on the internet by entering positive words on the internet. Now you're going to get lists, right? But you go through the words to pick words that really mean something to you, that's something you understand, something you value, makes you feel like Christmas, you feel really good. So when you've got this 25 words of love, you've now got a feel for love. And so what I started to do when I first did this, I had my 2 words, and I just want to show you what my original list looks like. That's my original list right there.
Wow.
Right? Okay. So when I looked at the 2 lists, I started to glance at them just back and forth 2, 3, 4 times a day. And as I started to look at the fear list, which I relate to because there's 25 that are part of me, I started to feel something. And what I started to feel is, I don't want this fear thing. I want love. I don't want fear. I want love. I kept choosing it over and over and over again. And I started to realize that if I choose it, I'm moving that direction. My choosing is moving. So I'm choosing it and I'm moving, and I'm choosing it and moving. Every time I glance between the fear list and the love list, I start moving. Now, I don't see it. I don't feel it. I don't even know what's happening. But I started to do that for 2-3 weeks. And one day I had like a difficult thing I was facing, a difficult personal relationship. And I had to decide whether I was going to live in fear or live in love. And I had a choice. I had a choice to make. And what's really amazing is I automatically chose a love response instead of a fear response. And it's happened boom, all of a sudden, wow, I'm choosing the love response. That feels really good, right? So now I'm being encouraged that my love list is where I'm moving to. I'm going there, I'm leaving fear, I'm moving to love, I'm leaving, moving, right? So that little assignment has been a really key, like the course I teach is called the environment changer. It's called the environment changer because I'm changing the environment of my mind. That's actually how this marriage went. I was changing the environment of my mind. Well, it turns out that everybody, some way, somehow needs to change the environment of their mind. And so now everybody does it in a lot of different ways. But the way I do it, as I teach it in this course, is really to actually get people to leave the world of fear and move into the world of love.
Well, and let me ask you the question on that then. So as you look at those words, and you said when you responded to that particular situation, you decided to move into the love or the positive rather than the negative. What was the response of the other individual? Because obviously they were having those emotions, they were feeling those things, and I don't know what that situation was, but if it was coming that way, and you could have responded negatively, but instead you responded with words that were positive, and then what happened?
So you want to know what happened, and you think, well, you said something, you did something. That's what you did. You said something, you did something, and it must have been really, really good, right? That's what you want to say. But it turns out I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything. What I did is I changed the energy of my output. The energy that's going out of me changed. That's what love does. Love changes your energy. It doesn't change your words. It doesn't change what your body does. It changes what you feel and what you give off. And that's really where the change is. And that's real not worldly, because it's so not sensational. Your energy changes? Well, wait a minute. We change our bodies and our mouths. That's what we do. Well, I know that's what the world does, but that's not what works. What works is change your energy. And that's what people change from. They change from a feeling they get. They get a feeling and they change their decision.
Well, and if we look at that in a more different way, what came to my mind was communication. Obviously, we're talking communication here, and you're suggesting energy. What I would suggest and want your input on this is, there are three ways in which we communicate. We have the words, which research shows is a small percentage of communication. We have the tone, which creates a much higher percentage of communication. And we also have the bodily response and how we act, which also is higher on that level. So from what you're telling me, because when we talk about tone, when we talk about, the body and how we look and, so on and so forth, that's energy. That words are words, but that's the smallest part of communication.
Dr. Doug, I'm really glad you're bringing that up that way, because a lot of people are not good with words. They don't have the words. They don't know what the words are. They don't know how to use them. They just don't communicate very well because they just don't have that makeup to be good with words. And so when we think about, so words actually don't help us? No, the way you feel does help us. Because if we can start to live in an energy of a higher vibration, that's what love is. It's a very high vibration. And the higher you go, the higher that is, because when you think about the living in the world, it's a very low vibration. This place is a very low vibrating place.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But when you go into love is a very high vibration place. And so this little exercise of coming up with the two lists, of these two lists, nobody can give that list to you. You can't give the two lists to anybody. And the reason you can't is because it's got to be so personal. It's got to belong to the person. That means they have to come up with the list. I have a list on the list. I have the word crazy. You know why crazy is on the list? Because in my younger years, I used to say the word a lot. Like, that's crazy. Oh, you're crazy, right? I used to say it over and over again. And somebody actually had to call me out on it. Like, why do you say crazy all the time? I didn't know. Like, another word that's on here is the word impossible. Why? Because I always said it. I said, oh, that's impossible. Nobody can do that. That's impossible. I would say it, right? So that's the reason why my list the fear list has those words on it. But when you're talking about the ways we communicate, the word version is not very good, and we can goof it up quite easily. And so if you're not good with words, that's really a good thing to learn. Like, oh, so my energy can change what I'm giving to people. Energy can change how they're feeling. Energy can change what decisions they make. My energy can change what decisions they make? Yeah, and you don't make those decisions for them. They make them themselves, but your energy changes what they decide. Now, I've seen this in couples. As a guy starts to get better and better at moving to love, and his vibration is higher and higher, his wife starts making different decisions. Why? Because she's picking up the energy of his, I call it the waterfall, because it's like mood and attitude and frequencies and vibrations. So when she feels those things, she can't explain it. She can't say, I'm doing this because. She doesn't use words. In fact, there's no words exchanged at all. And so what she's doing is like, should I go out with my girlfriends or should I spend some time with Jeremy? Like, now she makes the decision that I should spend time with Jeremy. Why? Because he feels better than my girlfriends do, right? How does she make that decision? Energy. Energy does that, right? So it's almost like, so are you talking to me to like live this on faith? Is that kind of what you're saying? Live it on faith? Well, you kind of have to have faith, because you have to have faith because you don't know anything about energy. You don't know about frequencies, and you don't know what a vibration is. You don't know what an energy is, what a sensitivity is. You don't know those things at all. So you really can't look and quantify anything in any rigid way. So the only way is to practice changing your energy. And so moving from fear to love is really the easiest thing I've ever seen. I've been teaching this course for 15 years, and I've never seen anything this easy. And I've got a lot of tools.
And it's interesting. I've always suggested, and this is a concept that I came up with a while ago. And a lot of people understand this, but I've always said, what, and even in my own life, my behavior is merely a reflection of who I am. And in my mind, part of our whole purpose even being on this planet and being in this physical form is to be able to learn how to become, as you say, that love and become an individual that is full of love, because then your words will reflect that, hopefully. Your energy definitely will reflect that, and your behavior will reflect that. And as you say, I talk about magnets and the fact that when we put out a certain energy, we receive that magnet energy back. And as you say, as you were putting out that energy of fear and frustration or whatever that happened to be, and you have 25 words that describe that, your wife probably just automatically was giving that back to you because you were the magnet that was attracting it.
That's right. Now, that's another way of talking about magnets, right? Because magnets pull, right? And so the idea of something pulling, an invisible energy pulling, like that's, you actually have to experience it yourself to actually feel like, wow, something pulled it. Something pulled me there. And so if you don't have any of those experiences, you don't know what magnets are like in your own personal life. But that's was a lot like how I was able to go through that 27 years, that what I called hell, 27 years of hell. But in the 28th year, that's actually the year that I started to realize I could live in I didn't call it this at the time, but I could live in an energy of love, and I could like myself, and I could feel good about her. I could feel good about me. And as I started to feel good about all that shutdown, fearful drive that was actually born into my childhood, that fear-based shutting down didn't help me at all. And so I was able to do something new. And I was able to do something new because I had the pain motivation to do it. And
okay, so here's my question. At what point in time did your wife finally realize, if she ever did, that she also had to do some of that introspective work and start to become more of that love rather than the anger for her, as you put it? At what point in time did she have to do that? And how many times, so two questions, as you've worked with people, do you find that if one person is totally not willing to do any of that work, ultimately what happens?
When we're talking about not willing, I've seen couples that the man or the woman has an anger and a determination that were born into them from a family system. So fear and anger and selfishness, that's like a system thing that's got all kinds of related fear ideas in it, right? If a person has that, that's their only way of living. And when you become this, what I call environment changer, when you become this person who changes the environment of your mind, why are you doing it? Are you doing it so you can get that person to stop being this way and start being this way? Is that why you're doing it? Well, if you're doing it for that reason, you'll never have anything happen that you really care about. You're not going to like it. So the way you have to think about it is, I'm not going to live in this better condition, this love condition, because I'm trying to get anything to happen. I'm living because it makes me happy. That's the reason you do it, because it makes me happy. And as you start moving more and more to love, and you're more committed to it, because there's something in your idea of moving to love and out of fear, there's something like really right about that. There's like, oh, I like that. I like it religiously. I like spiritually. I like everything about that idea, right? Well, if you're going to do it, you don't do it for any kind of cause. I want to make this person stop being this way and start being that way. Forget that. It's never going to work. It's going to backfire. All kinds of things are going to happen that are really bad, and you're not going to want that. So what you want is, I'm living in my form, you called it, in this form I'm in, because I'm trying to get to happy. I want to be a happy person. And so the only way to be a really, truly happy person is to leave the world of fear, which is a very complicated, very horrible place. And you don't want to stay there at all. But you have to learn that yourself. To live in fear and think you could have a life there where you could actually solve problems, you can't solve problems in fear. There's nothing to solve in fear. And no one can solve problems in fear. And there's like thousands upon thousands of stories how fear does not solve problems, right? It looks like it does, but it doesn't. So the only way you can make a decision is I want to live happy. I want to be in a happy place. I want to live happy. And so why do I do it? Because I want to be happy. And now if I'm in the environment of a person who is determined to fight and be angry and right, that person is choosing to leave your life. They're choosing to not feel the energy that you're giving off. But that's okay because you feel good. You feel happy. You like yourself. And if you have kids around you, they're going to pick up that energy. And I've seen that happen over and over again, where the parents actually change and the children feel happy. I've seen it happen at all ages, 16, 25, 12, 2, right? Kids get happy because when a biological parent, now this is not an adopted parent, but a biological parent, when that person has a great power as a biological parent, they really do amazing things for kids. So if they have a spouse who wants to stay angry because they come from a very angry family, then they may not change. But you have to allow that. You have to allow them to do whatever it is they want to do. Because
and you have to make your own decision to be happy. And obviously,
right.
In your case, something happened with your wife because, as you said, she grew up in that chaos situation also. But something happened because you stayed together for 40 years.
Yes, she did. So she died in my presence in 2019. And it was a very moving moment, because, by the way, we just didn't talk a lot. So talking was not a big part of our relationship. Really ever, because it was no talking. The only way to change the relationship is I had to change my energy. And as I started to change my energy, she started to change what she was deciding. Her decisions were different because remember, she had we're not leaving. She had that, like the wall was in the background, there was no leaving. And so she had to decide that she had to feel differently. And so what she did is she started to give a little more peace to our relationship because she could. She could, because I made that possible. So I was leading where we were going. And that's really what people, especially men, I just came up with a new book this month, published called This Is Not the Woman I Married. And so that book is everything I've ever tried to tell men about marriage, right? So all the things are in there, like 25 signs that you're losing her heart is in there. And that's a really important piece of work because that 25 signs is a great way to learn, what have I done wrong? Well, 25 signs you're losing your wife's heart. Well, how do you lose her heart? Well, these all make it happen. These all make them disappear. And so I point that out because when you don't have clear, and I talk to guys every week that come in out of the internet and they talk to me about where they are right now. And I just talked to a guy just a couple of hours ago. He said, I think I've just lost myself. I don't even know who I am anymore. I hear that a lot because they don't have a thought system that really kind of says, I'm leaving fear. I'm moving. They don't have something that definite. They lose themselves. They lose themselves because they're paying attention to children, paying attention to working, paying attention to making money, paying attention to, everything else. And so they get so caught up in what they call life that they can't remember what they believe in. They really don't know because it's all gone. So
interesting. So what do you do? What do you do when someone has experienced betrayal? Because that adds an additional issue to a relationship.
Yes. So what is betrayal? Betrayal says, I don't trust you anymore. That's a betrayal. Now, who cares what the betrayal is based on? We know what betrayal is. Betrayal is you lied to me. And when you lie to me, when you cheat on me, when you don't do things that say I'm important, I'm valuable, now I got to do something, right? So if I'm betrayed, what happens to me? What's the first thing that happens to me? I don't want to trust you anymore. I want to live on edge. I want to live in fear right away. I'm going to live in fear. And once I go there, I can't get out. I can't get out because I'm attached to fear. I'm attached to betrayal. Betrayal is fear, right? It's another version of fear, right? So now that I'm there, I can't get out because I've got an agenda. You hurt me, you wounded me, I'm against you, all right? So all that's building up, piling up in a big pile, but I can't get to love because I have to live in fear. And now that I have to live in fear, how am I going to solve my marriage problem? How am I going to even like I have a hint of that famous word everybody uses, reconciliation, like a massive word, for a simple idea.
Right.
How's that going to happen? It's not going to happen. You can't have anything better happen because you're living in fear. And betrayal is one of the great fear producers, right? Because you chose another man. You fell in love with our kids and not in love with me. This is, who cares what the betrayal is? It can come in all kinds of forms. But it still comes back to the simplicity of living in fear, living in love. And that's a decision that every person has to make for themselves. Somehow
And
they need to make it.
have you found, though, that when someone experiences that, and you talk about how they move over into the fear, if they move back into love, do you find that that betrayal sense ultimately starts to subdue so that you can start to experiencing something different? And as you've worked with couples, how many times have you worked with couples where there was actual true betrayal going on, that they have been able to restore that relationship and actually get back into a very healthy relationship?
It has to do with the individuals. There's no just mass. 90% of the people who do this solve that. And it's not like that. It's really up to the individual, because when that person is going to live in a choice where they live in something that resembles love versus the fear life that they used to live. The reason I talk about fear so much is fear is so complicated. Once you go in there, like, well, you just picked a word, you picked betrayal. And what is betrayal? Well, it's another super complicated soap opera mess of ideas that people hold on to and they can't let go. Because once you get into fear, that rat I was talking about grabs you and holds you. There's actually something there that grabs you and holds you. And so that's what holds you is an idea. An idea is, you cheated on me, you wronged me, you hurt me, right? And those kinds of things are once you attach yourself to. And so when the person starts to see that this person represents doing what I was doing, they are living in a place where I want to be happy. I don't want to live this way. I don't want to live in betrayal. I don't want to live in I was hurt, I was wounded, I was kicked out. I don't want to live like that. I want to live in a place where I want to be happy. And what is that? That's a mission, a decision. I want to live here. I don't want to live over there. Right? Once you're really clear that you really want to live there, now what's going to happen is the betrayal is going to start to weaken. Just the decision to love is going to weaken. And because it weakens, now the momentum is gone. Because fear takes a lot of momentum. Right? You got to have a lot of negativity building all the time in the background for you to keep in that place. But when you just make that one decision, I'm going to live in love, I'm not going to live in fear, you may not know how to get out. You may not know in the moment, but something is going to get you. Something's going to call to you. Something's going to reach out. A book, a friend, a coach, somebody is going to appear just because you made that one decision. And it's a real big thing, because if you think you're going to sit in fear and solve anything, you're not. It's never going to be solved, because fear can't solve anything.
One of the positive words that comes to my mind is forgiveness.
Yes,
and
that's right.
Do you find that forgiveness is one of those positive behaviors, elements of who we are, that ultimately creates that happier relationship?
Yeah, forgiveness is a value. And if you were raised with that value, I wasn't raised with that value, but if you're raised with that value, that's going to be a go-to first place you're going to go. You're going to go to forgiveness, right? So, there's a book called Radical Forgiveness, which actually gives a 2-sheet process of getting out of fear. And it's really helpful, right? So radical forgiveness is really what we're talking about. Why is it radical? It's radical because when you leave here and go there, you're doing something radical. You're doing a big thing. You're doing a big healing thing. But I'm simplifying it even further. If you just make the decision to love and leave fear, if you say, I'm doing it, I'm leaving, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm leaving, that decision is enough to get you moving.
Yeah,
that's going to start the momentum.
I love that. Can you believe that time has gone by? Here we are having this wonderful conversation, and it's like, oh my goodness. All right. So as we close, what would be a message that you'd like to share with the audience?
Leave fear, move to love. That'd be it. That'd be the simplest and make the decision. Don't just tinker with it. Don't just use your intellect to debate. Oh, what should I do? Make the decision. Make a decision that I am leaving fear and I'm moving to love. And once you make the decision, a whole lot of things are going to happen, and you're not even going to see them because it's not going to be obvious. They're going to be subtle. They're going to be small little changes, small realizations, small ideas, small conversations, all going to be small. But if you pick up that change in your environment, in your world, in your physical world, as you pay so much attention to, you're going to start to see little things changing because they're all calling to you to leave fear and move to love. And it's the simplest thing I've ever seen.
Love it. Love it. That's a great message. Well, Larry, thanks so much. This has been fascinating, and it's certainly a different approach to relationships that are struggling versus what you usually hear about. And I love what you talked about, the energy that goes forth, and how change can be in the other person if they're willing to recognize that energy, and all of a sudden they start to respond differently. And so anyway, thank you so much. Wonderful message.
Thank you very much.
And folks, thanks for listening. I hope you've really enjoyed this and look forward to having you join us again soon. So this is Dr. Doug saying namaste.